You ever have that feeling? Like you're really pushing for something important, you're getting close, and bam, suddenly everything seems, I don't know, harder, more obstacles.
Yeah, like the universe decides to throw a few curveballs just when you think you're almost there.
Exactly. Well, we're diving into a story today that kind of touches on that feeling, or at least the challenges we face near our goals. It's Matthew 14.2-33, the famous one, Jesus walking on water.
And Peter trying to join him, yeah. Our main source here is a theological look at this passage, really digging into faith and doubt.
So our mission for you, listening, is to get a better handle on how faith and doubt work together, especially when things get tough near, let's say, the finish line. Peter's story is just such a vivid example.
And Matthew's account is interesting because he's the only one who really focuses on Peter getting out of the boat. Mark and John mention Jesus walking on water, but Peter's attempt is unique to Matthew.
Good point. Okay, so let's set the scene. Where does this happen?
Well, it's right after the feeding of the 5,000, a huge miracle. Jesus basically makes the disciples get into the boat and go ahead of him across the Sea of Galilee.
Makes them.
Like-
Sounds a bit forceful.
The text suggests some urgency, yeah. So they're out there, it's late, like really late, the fourth watch, so between 3 and 6 a.m., and they're far from land, maybe 3 or 4 miles out.
And it's not smooth sailing.
Not at all. They're battling a strong headwind, rowing hard, getting nowhere fast. They must have been exhausted and likely pretty scared. You know, the Sea of Galilee could whip up some nasty storms very quickly.
Right, so dark, stormy, miles from shore, exhausted, grim picture.
And then they see something, a figure walking towards them on the water.
Okay, that would be terrifying.
Absolutely. Their first reaction, pure terror. They cry out thinking it's a ghost, a phantasma.
Can't blame them.
Not really, but Jesus immediately calls out, "Take courage, it is I, do not be afraid." And that phrase, "it is I," ego eimi in the Greek.
That's significant, isn't it?
Hugely significant. It echoes God's I am from Exodus 3.13. It's a hint, maybe more than a hint, of his divine identity.
Wow. Okay, so Jesus identifies himself, tries to calm them down, and then Peter.
Peter, always impulsive, always ready to leap. He shouts back, "Lord, if it is you, I sue I, command me to come to you on the water."
Such a Peter thing to ask. Not just, okay, glad it's you, but prove it. Let me do the impossible too.
Exactly. And Jesus' response is simple, just one word, come.
And Peter does it.
He does. He climbs out of the boat onto the stormy sea and actually starts walking on the water towards Jesus. It's an incredible initial act of faith and courage.
Amazing. But it doesn't last, does it? That's the part everyone remembers.
Right. The text says Peter sees the wind. You can't really see wind, but you see its effect, the huge waves. You feel its force, and he becomes afraid.
So his focus shifts.
Precisely. He takes his eyes off Jesus, the one who called him and enabled him, and focuses instead on the danger, the storm raging around him. And that's the moment doubt creeps in, or maybe floods in.
And he starts to sink.
Immediately. The moment fear and doubt take over, his faith falters, and the miraculous walk ends. He cries out, "Lord, save me."
A desperate plea.
And Jesus' response is just as immediate. He reaches out his hand and catches him, saves him.
But then there's a bit of a rebuke, right?
There is. As they're there, Jesus says, "O you of little faith, oligopistos, why did you doubt? Distasso."
Oligopistos. Little faith, not no faith.
Exactly. The analysis points this out. It's not that Peter had zero faith, he had enough to get out of the boat initially. It's that his faith was weak, it wavered. And distasso, the word for doubt, it literally means to be of two minds.
Pulled in two directions. Between trusting Jesus and fearing the storm.
Right. His doubt wasn't questioning if it was Jesus, but questioning if Jesus' power was greater than the immediate, terrifying reality of the storm he was focusing on. He let the circumstances overwhelm his trust.
Okay, so Jesus rescues him, rebukes him gently for his wavering faith. What happens next?
They both get back into the boat, and the second they do, the wind just stops instantly.
Wow, the contrast.
Yeah. And the effect on the other disciples is profound. They worship Jesus, saying, "Truly you are the Son of God." This is actually their first collective confession of him as God's Son in Matthew's Gospel. It's a pivotal moment.
Okay, so let's circle back to that initial idea, the feeling that challenges intensify right before a breakthrough, near the finish line. Does this story support that?
Well, it's interesting. Peter was moving towards Jesus, his goal in that moment. But the analysis we looked at really emphasizes that his failure, his sinking, stemmed from his distraction. His focus shifted to the storm.
So it wasn't necessarily about getting closer to Jesus, making things harder.
Not directly, according to this interpretation. The text points more towards internal factors. Peter's human weakness, losing focus, letting fear take over. It was about where he placed his attention, not necessarily his physical proximity to Jesus intensifying the external opposition. The storm was already raging before he stepped out.
So the challenge was constant, but his response to it changed when he got distracted.
That seems to be the core message. It's less about external forces ramping up near the end and more about the internal struggle to maintain faith and focus throughout the storm, regardless of how close you are to the boat or to Jesus.
Right. So the key takeaways aren't so much about bracing for a final onslaught, but more about what? The constant need for faith.
Yeah, the necessity of faith, definitely. But also the real danger of fear and doubt, how quickly they can derail us if we let them. And crucially, the importance of keeping our focus fixed on, in this case, Jesus, on our source of strength and purpose, not on the waves crashing around us.
And the story also shows Jesus' power over nature and his grace, right? He still saves Peter.
Absolutely. Peter faltered, but Jesus was right there. It really paints Peter's whole experience, stepping out, facing the storm, failing, crying out, being rescued as a kind of paradigm for our own journeys, maybe.
That makes sense. We step out in faith, we hit challenges, we sometimes lose focus and stumble, but the key is turning back, crying out for help, knowing that grace is there.
Precisely. It's a cycle many people experience.
So, maybe the final thought for everyone listening is this. Think about when you're facing challenges, especially when you feel close to achieving something significant. Where does your focus naturally go? To the storm, the obstacles.
Yeah. And what might it look like practically to consciously keep your eyes fixed on what truly matters, on your ultimate goal or source of strength, even when, maybe especially when the wind seems loudest?